Heather, it's nice to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Hi, Mitch. Great to see you, too.
What's been going on at the vet college since the announcement that cannabis will be legal at some point later this summer?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've had a lot of inquiries, that's for sure. People are very interested as to what impact there's going to be on caseload of a condition called marijuana intoxication, and that particularly pertains to dogs.
Have you personally dealt with cases of intoxication in marijuana with pets?
Absolutely. That's the main reason I'm chatting with you. As a veterinarian in general practice for several years in British Columbia, which had maybe a slightly more relaxed view on marijuana than the rest of the country, or at least maybe perhaps more access to the product, I saw dozens of cases while in practice there. On average, the clinic I worked at saw several cases a month.
Really?
Yeah.
So what are people calling you about? What do they want to know when the phone rings?
Usually they're calling on emergency basis, and they're saying, my dog's gotten into something and we need to come in.
And that's how they leave it.
That's usually how it starts. And then the conversations go from there. And usually through a little bit of history taking and understanding what symptoms their dog is experiencing, we can usually get to the root cause, especially when we ask the question, has your dog had any exposure to marijuana? And when the answer is yes, we know it's time to get the animal in.
So what happens when an animal ingests marijuana?
Dogs tend to inadvertently eat stashes of marijuana, and they seem to be very attracted to marijuana and will eat it readily. Additionally, if the marijuana is part of an edible, like a chocolate or a brownie, the dog will be even more attracted to that product. This can be a real challenge because chocolate is toxic in its own right, so that can further compound the problem. So dogs have even been known to roll in marijuana growing outdoors in gardens. So they're really, wherever it is in your backyard or on your kitchen table, it's really a problem. And they really love the smell and taste of the plant.
So what do they look like when they come in?
They're really reactive to the THC, which is the chemical compound in the drug that makes it psychoactive, which makes it a recreational drug. And in these dogs, the clinical signs usually start about 30 to 90 minutes after they've eaten the marijuana. THC stores in the body's fat cells, so because of that, it can last for days. And you see dogs that may be a little bit dopey or sedated. They seem really sleepy. They can have what we call ataxia, and that means they may be stumbling or having some difficulty walking or a lack of coordination. Some dogs will salivate or drool excessively, and their heart rates initially can be low, but if they've really had a high dose, they can go high. They may vocalize and whine and bark and yip, and some of them are urinating uncontrollably. In essence, they appear drunk and intoxicated.
How do you treat this now?
Prevention's the best treatment. Yeah. And as a veterinarian, I can't say enough about prevention. This is a condition that can 100% be prevented. And the best advice veterinarians can give is to keep your pets away from the product. This drug needs to be treated with respect, like any prescription drug. And you need to keep it in a container that dogs can't consume. Dogs, their sense of smell is so strong, they can smell it right through a plastic container, and that won't stop them from eating it. I've had cases where the dog has actually eaten the little pill vial, childproof lock and all, with the marijuana.
Really?
So it needs to be kept out of reach, out of sight, just like you would treat a prescription medication with a child.
This isn't going to kill my pet.
In very severe cases, while that's very, very, very rare, there are at least several reported cases, particularly of edibles, which may have high concentrations of the THC in them, that can be fatal in dogs.
So what do I do if I see my dog starting to exhibit some of these conditions that you just explained to us?
Absolutely. You need to get to the veterinarian. And actually, you need to get to the veterinarian if you know they've been exposed and consumed it, even before they're showing the clinical signs. What we know is that we may be able to induce vomiting and get that marijuana product out of the dog before the symptoms appear, but that's only in the early stages. Once they're symptomatic, once they're heavily intoxicated, vomiting may actually be a bad idea because they may not be able to prevent themselves from aspirating.
So what do? You put them in the doggy drunk tank? Or
Essentially, yeah.
Really?
They need to be kept warm. They need to be kept safe because they have lack of coordination. Some of these guys will thrash about and smash their heads. So padded rooms, comfortable places, warmth, fluid support. So often they're on intravenous fluids.
Is there a drug therapy as well?
There is. So in some cases, we can use absorbents, which are things like activated charcoal that can be given orally, but that's only in the early stages. If it's really severe and really bad, intravenous lipid therapy has to be used to bind the fat cells and pull the THC out of the fat. Again, that would be for severe cases, but it's necessary at times.
What about other animals? I know we've talked mostly about dogs here.
We know that cats potentially could be affected, but the research is really scant with respect to cats. I looked through the research this weekend, and I couldn't find a good case study that had any indication of it. Maybe cats are smarter than dogs.
Or fussier.
Definitely fussier.
Mine sure is.
And we know their sense of smell is great. So there's some kind of aversion that cats have to the product, whereas dogs have the opposite. They have an affinity. And likely because it smells good, and maybe it's in a cookie that's, delicious. So they're just really excited about the product. And it's unfortunate because it's very, very harmful to them.
Okay, so if my dog gets hopped up on weed, how long will it be before he or she is back to normal?
It's until the THC gets out of their system. So it may be, depending on the amount of consumption, it could be several hours. It could be several days. It seems to be that the fat binding with THC in dogs, if it's high enough quantity, they can be sick for days and days and days. We've had cases that have lasted, 3 or 4 days where an animal needs to be hospitalized that entire time.
How much is this going to cost me?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is why prevention's so key, because it won't cost you anything
if you're smart,
if you prevent it. Absolutely. But if you don't prevent it and you end up at the veterinarian, you're going to be dealing with emergency fees likely. Most dogs don't consume weed at 10 o'clock in the morning and book themselves an appointment. They do so at 2 o'clock in the evening on a Friday or Saturday night when the party's happening.
True.
So you've got emergency fees and after hours fees and exam fees and fluid therapy and hospitalizations and exams. So in 2015, one of the pet insurance companies stated that the average fee at that time was about $500 US. I suspect it's much higher now, and given our exchange rate, it's a pretty hefty bill to foot.
What's the most creative excuse somebody's given you for bringing you a stone dog?
It was my mom's.
It was my mom's
weed,
not dog.
Yeah. We've had some good ones. I think one of the better ones was a young guy who'd come in wearing a T-shirt with a picture of a weed plant on it. And I probably asked him 10 times if the dog had gotten into pot. And he kept saying, no, I don't think so. And I'm pretty sure both him and the dog had gotten into quite a bit. And the dog recovered fully after being treated.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.